Tourism AI podcast where we talk about all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. And it's been a little while since we talked to Josh because we did a whole bunch of recordings at the TIA BC conference and spoke to a bunch of tourism professionals. But we're back with Josh and we're catching up on all things agents today. So just for I guess everybody's benefit, the last time Josh and I talked, we sort of talked about the fact that really agents aren't a thing yet, despite the hype. And we had some caveats in the way we sort of addressed that issue because there is agentic capability and there are starting to be some forms of agents, but really kind of the full scale types of kind of autonomous agents that are sort of the promise of agents at the time weren't yet in existence, at least in our perspective, they weren't. And I wanted to catch up on whether what has progressed. I don't know, it's been what, a month and a half, not that long. Things have been progressing quickly. And really doesn't matter at the end of the day for tourism organizations. And, I think it does matter, but it matters not because agents are something that are impacting tourism today, but it does matter because agents are a thing that are coming. And there is some preparation that I think all organizations need to do to get ready for agents. So why don't we start off with Josh? I guess 6 weeks later or whatever it is, agents, are they a thing?
Yeah. So where we are today, this is April 2025. Agents are coming. There's a few really good out in the wild, open and available agentic AI models, aka reasoning models that work with tools that are viable for very specific things. As of today, we have OpenAI O3, which is a really powerful model that can use tools well. And some of the use cases that I think we're seeing the best of AI agents really like nailing right now is fairly limited to research tasks. So if we rewind 6 months, 3 months, doing research with AI tools was pretty much one call, one response. You could call a Google search query through an agent and it'll go search and then find the first page of Google, scrape the titles, the metadata, everything that showed up there, and then bring back an answer, which could be good, using tools like Perplexity. They have a little bit of a one or two extra steps in processing that information back to the user, which was great. It replaced my Google. We've been talking to people for the last 2 years about using AI to basically supplement what you're doing on Google to find information out there. The difference now is that these models are able to persistently continue to use tool for an extended period of time, meaning 20, 30, 40 minutes until they find any information they need to complete their goal. And that's what the agents really, when it boils down to the agent's job, it's our job, to give the agent a role and a goal with a clear objective and a clear output instruction. And it's the agent's job to pick what it needs to do to get there, to keep itself organized and on track, and then to ultimately fulfill its task. And so when we talk about agents right now, one of the things we're starting to see is obviously with every new model, with every advancement in the AI landscape overall, everybody gets excited. Oh, this is groundbreaking. This is transformational. And that hype wave is very much still strong and alive. But the expectation for what agents actually have to be able to accomplish and what reliability standards we put on them is becoming more clear. Right. Just because I have an agent that can spend 45 minutes looking around the internet to prepare a report that's really long for me, like just to baseline a couple of things with ChatGPT and their O3 research agent going to do deep research on the internet. I've seen my, at this point, agent go out for 30 minutes and prepare a 60-page report, which is like 60 pages is a lot of information. And vetting that information, it's like, okay, this is good, but does this information actually need to be 60 pages? Like it went extreme. Manus is another agent. That's one of the Chinese companies. Their agent can work for the same or longer amount of time and write more. I got 160 pages out of my Manus for the same research ask. But just because it can go and do that doesn't mean that's productive. Because now, like in this example, I gave the same research task of something that I wanted to find out the historical implications of and what about modern, and try to compare and contrast those ideas. The prompt was 20 pages and that prompt took an hour to put together. So if we zoom out and say, oh, well, that was amazing, that agent just did all this work. Like I spent more than an hour preparing for that. And then I spent multiple hours reviewing its work because what it did was it gathered all this information and put it into a really, 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 really long, drawn out thing. And that's the best thing that agents can do right now is use tools persistently to keep working on its task. Now, the most common and the most successful thing it's doing is using the internet as a tool. That search the internet, gather information, scrape page. That's the tool use that's happening. But right now, what we're starting to see is a shift towards not just going to find information on the internet, but now all of the main AI providers are now integrating this into your connection to your files, AKA your Google Drive is now available for your ChatGPT to look through, and you can do deep research against your information. And this is maybe the segue that I want to talk about for tourism organizations, because when we discuss AI agents right now and we discuss what the capabilities are, where the models are going, most of the work that has to be done on the agent side of things is developer work. And the vast majority of tourism organizations and destinations do not have development teams, nor are they a like software product. They don't offer that. You offer experiences, you offer interaction, you offer memories. Like these are the value adds. And so the conversation shifts with, well, what does AI mean to you? Not necessarily what's the best new agentic protocol, or agent to agent Google protocol, or model context protocol, which is a tool using protocol. Like these are all like attempts at creating a standard way of, here's how we build, here's this common language, here's how we can all rally on this open source framework. But that's all, like, when I talk and say those sentences strung together, that's developer speak. That's not destination speak. That's not hospitality. So when we think about what is the job at hand for tourism organizations, it's getting organized so that you can use these tools to better serve your patrons. And I think, Peter, it'd be great for you to talk about how you're working with tourism organizations to get organized, to prepare, because there's so much work to do that's not developing, experimenting, and testing agents in a lab when there's practical work to be done.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to sort of organizing information and data and understanding, how you want to use that information and data. You and I have talked, I think, to no end about standard operating procedures and how important they are. So, right now it comes down to, question number one, how is your data organized? Where does your data live? How clean is it? Do you have standard operating procedures? So how detailed are they? Right? So these are all the things, you talked about, for example, connecting ChatGPT to your file base, and that's a great starting point actually for a lot of organizations. So I've been working with a couple destinations in the last week actually. We attached our ChatGPT Teams account to our files, our G Drive, and so I've been kind of reaching out to some of our clients and saying, hey, let us help you do this, and let's kind of test it together. And that's an interesting experiment because you do that and you start to find out just there's a lot of old data and a lot of old information in those files, and it's finding everything. And so, like, even in my own experimentation, we did that. And we didn't connect every single file because obviously there's sensitive files and HR related files and other things that we didn't connect. It's files that had sensitive information about our financial picture, all that kind of stuff. So we sort of picked and chose. But it became very clear, literally the first search I did, it like brought up a whole bunch of like quite old information about a client that we've had for 10 years, right? So, and I did that test on purpose, and it like made me instantly say, okay, so now we need to really think about our files and archiving things and keeping things fresh. And now I'm like starting to think about, okay, how do we create very consistent information in our files, right? And the way it's formatted, the type of information, on a client by client basis, for example, so that we can make the tool useful, right? And so that's sort of like that's the starting point, right? And one of the things I've been doing, I did an experiment with my team the other day, and it was about reverse engineering our processes. And I'll just say we have a lot of standard operating procedures and processes at our company, but not everybody follows them like every other company. So I kind of created basically a how-to guide in terms of reverse engineering your processes, and I asked my team to use their own kind of processes and workflows and try to do this how-to guide and see if it works, right? Like I tried to make like a dummy-proof how-to guide, and so I gave it to my team to say, okay, no instructions, just follow this, right? And actually, like, so most were successful, but what came out of that was interesting in the sense of some of the recommendations from the ChatGPT and the reverse engineering process was like, here's a form that you should have. That's your standard form for every single client that you're doing this for, and this is the checklist and the information you should be asking every single client in this order, right? And so that was a very eye-opening experience of like, this is how we have to prepare for the agentic future, is we need to really systematize and processify what we do and really create forms, create consistency, create file structures that the AIs can read, make sense of, go through old files, archive things, right? So there's sort of a big data cleanup project. Unfortunately, the least sexy thing I can possibly recommend. But the reality is like we got to do the unsexy work to get the sexy benefits down the line, right? So yeah, it's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, that I think it's really important to think, like, if you're sitting there thinking, well, that doesn't, like, you didn't talk about AI at all there. You just talked about making your share drive like clean and organized, and like, what does that even mean? Something to be said about that is when you see what AI can do, you have your aha moment, and you get this like spark of, well, okay, this is powerful, this has potential, this can help me. The assumption then, I think, just human nature, as we see this and we start to build trust, we assume too much of the capability of the model itself. Like even the reasoning models today, with access to G Drive, it doesn't know how to sort your G Drive. It doesn't know where to look. Like it's the
Yeah,
smartest available model. It's more intelligent than any human by like testing perspectives. But without that context and understanding about like why is everything set up this way? Why are we organized this way? How do we actually like what is here? If you were bringing on a new staff, like, and we don't think about it like this with the AIs always, but if you were bringing on a new staff member who like knew how to use Drive, but they didn't know how you use your Drive, like how long would it take them to really understand everything, and how much looking around and time would they need to spend navigating until they felt comfortable, confident, and like competent? That is the same problem that the AI is going to have with you. And so when we talk about getting organized, what we're talking about is like starting to like standardize like folder structure levels. Like how does your organization do it? Now, my organization, your organization, everybody's different, but how we start to do that and getting it written down is the critical missing component that like is going to separate like me asking my chat GPT to help me do something by using information in my drive
yeah,
and creating this middle level of context layer, if you will, of, even just simple instructions like, hey, ChatGPT, here's a file that tells you all about our share drive. Here's how
that's
we've,
right.
organized the files. Here's where we store this type of information. If you have that in a document written down, the prerequisite to that is that you've actually gotten organized. And so therefore, when you go to delegate that and whatever AI tool you use, because Claude has access to your drive now, Perplexity can get access to your drive. If you don't have this like information concierge like booklet, it's just going to be like looking and doing its best. Like, and there's a point where it will get like model intelligence, model capability, and reliability will get good enough to where we don't have to do all this extra effort of getting like things structured. But right now, the models that we have, the reasoning models and the take action capabilities really thrive on this rich detail and context. And when you then look at so getting organized is something you always talk about, Josh and Peter, and you
Yeah,
always
yeah,
talk about SOPs and what the hell does that mean to agents? This is what it means to step into laying the foundation for agents in your organization. Because if you have a standard way of organizing information that's easily navigatable by your human workforce and your AI helpers. And you have documented this is also how we do work. So here's how we organize information. Here's how we get things done. That's what SOPs do. You're defining the quality standards. You're defining the goal for every workflow. You're defining here are the steps that we take, as humans to get this done. When presenting that information to the AI, it's going to think about it a little different, but it's going to understand you. So if you think about giving it the right amount of context, that's what we're getting at. That is the foundational work that you have to do, because if you're going to leverage agents in the near future or in the future at all, having your file system organized and documented, like written down, like here's how we do this, is going to be the differentiator between an agent that you're talking to in ChatGPT being able to help you accomplish a task from X SOP
yeah,
or not. So
yeah.
that's why
Oh,
we kind of harp on this.
Yeah, what's interesting too is like as a Google company, I was actually listening. So I've been meeting with Google Cloud, the Google Cloud team, to sort of try to understand their products and their services and how it all works. And I actually I heard last week at the Google conference they also introduced a concept that apparently the Google Cloud team uses, but it's not available to the public yet. It's called Google Agent Space. And it's interesting because I was listening to a podcast about it, and they were essentially Google Agent Space is just a place where you're going to be able to organize all of this information we're talking about. And so it'll have a place for prompts, it'll have a place for SOPs, it'll have a place for, you know what I mean? It'll just have everything packaged together. But it's still I haven't seen it yet, and I'm actually meeting with Google next week, and I'm going to ask about it. I'd love to get early access, Google, just saying. What's interesting about it is that from everything I read and heard about it is that really it's just a place to kind of organize all this stuff, and so that it's going to make it easier for companies just to know what to put where, you know what I mean? And sort of, and the tool will be built so that, okay, you put your SOP here, you put your context here, you put your that over here, here's maybe instructions to the files, whatever. And that's basically going to be, sort of Google's way of organizing sort of and deploying agents. But really, it's still going to force companies to go through and do the work, right? It's not, there's no magic bullet here, unfortunately. And you and I talk about AI hype all the time. I don't think there's anything more hyped about yet to date than the agents space in AI. And I think for good reason. I think agents are going to truly transform everything in really, really really big ways. But it's only as good. It's either you're gonna do the work now or you're gonna pay for some company that's sort of built the tools and the processes and everything else, and you're gonna pay a lot of money for them to organize all your stuff later to actually make agents work for you, right? So, I think that regardless, it's valuable to do the work now. And I'll just say, the O3 model to me, you're right. It has starting to have some agentic capabilities, and I've been really playing around and testing it as yesterday as an example. I wanted to do hey, basically create me an expert conversion rate optimization analyst prompt, and it was very detailed. And what's cool about it is that it gave me this prompt. It's like 3 pages, but what's cool about it is that it gave me it's from a context perspective, obviously the website that I want to do the conversion rate optimization sort of analysis on, but it also kind of give me the link to your analytics, give me your heat mapping tool results, give me this, give me that. So it's interesting in the sense that it asked for a bunch of things that probably weren't possible before, because now I can put multiple links in there to multiple reports. I can add some PDFs. So to your point of using tools, I think it's smarter now and it's capable of doing very many different things in one prompt. So if I sort of feed, I got this huge prompt. If I feed it with the right information, either in PDF form or links or whatever it is, and I did this yesterday as a test, honestly, it was amazing. The level of detail that it was really something, because it had the context, to your point. It had, right, the prompt I created was like the SOP in terms of how the quote unquote agent is supposed to behave, but I still needed all of the information organized, and I still needed the context, and I still needed all those things in order for it to run the test and do the thing, right? So that's just sort of, again, early stages of kind of agentic capability, but it's coming. And I think that if I think about agentic capability for tourism, I mean, obviously, I think about customer service agents, which again, to some extent exist, but not necessarily in the pure agentic form. But I think that's probably an area where we're going to get there pretty quick, and or we're really close. Agents that can go and retrieve information from your RAG system, go to your websites, have a conversation with people, go back and forth, bring on a human if it doesn't know the answer, or if it's being requested. Those are all starting to be agentic feeling capabilities, really, right? I don't know if you agree, but and that's going to really change the game for tourism, the ability to have these customer service agents that can sort of go and do all these things. Eventually, send an itinerary, send a PDF, send an email, right? So it's sort of to me, they're agentic capabilities, but they're also still kind of like really smart automation systems. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that in terms of kind of the state of, I guess, customer service tools that have been built? Are they agents? Or are they a set of tools with a bunch of automations at this point, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's worth hanging out on the idea of where we are with agents now is indicative of what the limitations of like just straight up AI models are. And what I mean by that is they've found out, I say they being Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, the best research teams who are the smartest people about building these models have hit the end of the line for what is a model capable of by itself. Like my ChatGPT without the use of tools is just something that knows a lot of information and can retrieve it in a way that seems human like. That's the limitation of the AI model. But the AI model has a tool belt now. And that's what you're talking about with this customer service application. Every organization can look at the available tools that it already uses, the surfaces where their customers already engage, like what on a computer level, like what screens do your customers use to interact with your business? And then on a customer experience level, like what ways do you interact with your customers, right? If you think about that level and abstract it, well, how would we best serve our customer? Well, we would want to get them the information they're looking for as fast as possible with accuracy. We want to provide meaningful interactions that help build and establish more trust over time. We would want to remember all these details that we learn about our customers so we can better serve them and personalize the experience that they have to their unique situation and context. And there's some sort of like exchange happening in every interaction that we want to create more value for our customers than we did before. AI models that are capable of thinking and using tools for a longer period of time and becoming more reliable at using those tools without us predetermining every step of the way really does start to open the door up for how do you surprise and delight and serve your customer. Because where you would have to in a deterministic system, like kind of what you're asking, is this just automation? Is this just the right combination? Like website chatbots have been a thing for decades. Website chatbots have relied on very deterministic intent paths. Okay, if the customer is looking for a refund, then it goes down this conversational pathway. And there's 5 steps that we need to gather information from them and figure out what's wrong so that we can hand this off to the human who's going to give them a call and take care of it, right? That's a deterministic pathway that's like predefined because we know what the right steps should be. But the challenge of a more competent and reliable AI agent says, well, here's how we help people. Here's our quality standard for that. And it's your job to make sure that we take good care of them according to our policies. You give the AI the policies, you give it access to call the human when it's time or when it thinks it's appropriate. You have it give it the opportunity to retrieve all the information and context about the customer through the database, and you have all of the different FAQs and policy data in a system that can be retrieved through memory. There's less predetermining what has to happen to serve that customer and help them with the goal of, hey, we're going to take care of them. We're going to take care of them according to our standards. We're going to take care of them in a way that builds trust. We're going to take care of them in a way that does right based off of our ethical framework, right? Predetermining that would have been a huge developer task before that we would have to like pretty much make a path for and hope that it doesn't break. Because if it breaks, it's, you have to restart. The agentic promise is that we don't have to break it and we don't have to spend so much time actually deciding how it gets used. Instead, we look at all of the resources available to help that person and we delegate by giving those to the agent through, say, a simpler framework of not having to predefine every step of how we're going to do it. But that's still
Yeah,
a
and I want to
developer task.
It is, yeah, yeah. And I want to just sort of, as much as sort of we are where we are, I do want to actually put some urgency on this conversation, though, Josh, because, I've been listening to a lot of information and podcasts and other things on this space, and I want to first of all talk about, a concept in technology called Moore's law, and Moore's law basically sort of, I guess, dictates that technological capabilities sort of double every 18 to 24 months, and the cost of technology halves in that same amount of time. That's sort of generally the Moore's law principle, right? And I've been hearing a lot about, now agents are sort of coming in. This is the interesting part about agents is that I feel like probably the leading labs probably have a lot more agentic capability than us non-leading lab people have access to. And so, the speed of development at the labs is accelerating. And Moore's law. I actually heard a podcast that somebody was saying that the speed of development in the agent space, it's like doubling every like quarter or something like that. Like it's really fast. So I do want to put some urgency on this in the sense of like while today agents are maybe not quite there yet. It's going to be there. Like I think probably in 2025, at the end of 2025, we're going to see some serious capability enhancements and ability, and the people are going to be building on top of these things. So like this is coming fast, right? And so for tourism organizations, it's like if you haven't done the work around AI adoption in your organization, if you haven't done the work around organization in your organization, if you don't have a AI committee actively talking about AI and how to like, sort of accelerate adoption, I think you're falling behind a lot now at this point. Like things are at a point, and I don't want to be sort of that guy, but you're falling behind. And your competitors are out there doing are doing stuff, right? So so I just want to make sure we make that point. And the other interesting thing about kind of Moore's law here, and I'm just reading off of ChatGPT. I just kind of asked it a question here, but so what's interesting about kind of what is actually doubling and how fast. So I like this a lot. This is ChatGPT's answer, but I'm just going to read it. It says it's not just a horsepower race anymore. We're doubling leverage. So time leverage. What used to take 5 hours now takes 5 minutes. People leverage. One person with five well-designed agents can now outperform a five-person team without them. Knowledge leverage. Agents can access and apply their own institutional knowledge. And this is ChatGPT. Data, SOPs, strategies instantly. So context is compounding, right? So, that's the interesting part about it, is that it's about now these capabilities can kind of, like leverage all the data, information, organization, all the things we've just been talking about. So again, if it's pure agent or not, I think it's a moot point, but like, you know, if you have ChatGPT connected to your knowledge base is well organized, your SOPs are documented, given some instructions to the knowledge base about sort of how to use all these different things. You can leverage all of that now and do things like amazingly fast. And like, again, I'm going to give you an example of how I used this just the other day. Is I asked ChatGPT for the last 10 press releases I did for a client, and for it to create a set of key messages based on those last 10 press releases. And it did that for me in like, seconds. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but like that is something that would have taken a human hours to do in the past. Go find them all, organize them all, do the key messages, blah blah blah, right? So, and it's all referenced. It was all nice and clean, right? It was to the client in like literally a matter of like in 10 minutes, and the client had it, right? So, I mean, that is just leveraging the data and the information in ways. And similarly, like if you start to think about sales agents or customer service agents, obviously we talk about the 24 hours a day open, the ability to go and again go grab that information. So if I think about visitor centers, for example, right? Imagine the power of a visitor center if you have a ChatGPT account in your visitor center, and plugged into certain knowledge documents, not the entire organization's knowledge documents, but all the historical stuff, all the things to do. And what's cool about it also now we're getting into a little bit of a slightly different conversation, but as a visitor center, the cool thing about it too is that if you hook it up to your files correctly, then, it's a matter of something's changed. We changed it and now we just changed it in the file. And so now the human agent at the visitor center is using their ChatGPT and always accessing the most up-to-date information, right? Which is really cool. So from a training perspective, also, I think it can save a lot of time and energy, right? Because you just update the information in the file, maybe have a weekly what's new file in your file system, and you send that to your team. If they read it, great. If they don't read it, the agent knows, or the ChatGPT tool knows that it's there, and can access it and answer those questions, right? So I think that's kind of the exciting thing for tourism right now is, again, do this work properly and your capabilities are going to accelerate hugely. And then as agents come in more and more, it's just gonna put you in a better spot. And I'm just gonna say, Josh, you're not even aware of this, but I've been working over the last couple of months here on a potential project around building a tool for the destination space. I'm just in the research phase right now, just trying to understand the competitive environment and all the different things that exist, and sort of just, and in fact, using a lot of agentic capability, deep research. I've probably run like 40 deep research projects around this idea because I don't want to go and make a huge investment and find out that somebody's already doing what I'm doing and whatever, right? But I see the vision of what I want to build is for now a tool that's probably a pretty smart automation tool. But I can see it moving into basically very specialized vertical AI agents, right? So if you build it for very specific purpose, very specific sort of knowledge, very specific workflows that are common to all DMOs, you're sort of building basically on the path to building agents, right? I mean, that's essentially what I'll be doing, right? And so again, I haven't even decided if I'm going to build it. I'm just in research right now, just looking at it, talking to stakeholders, those types of things. But I can see also, you know, these vertical AI agents coming. I mean, this is what's happening in every single vertical, every single space, and every single job in every single vertical. So I guess my question to you on that note is, how do you think that's going to impact labor and sort of, are agents going to come in and take over all our jobs and then we're all out of work? Or is there a role for humans still in this upcoming agentic future?
Yeah, I think the best way to think about the future is to look at the past. And especially with this technology shift, like this is a big shift in what labor and capabilities could be and can be with humans. When you look back to, like, say, the Industrial Revolution, like before the assembly line was invented, there were people who were doing the same thing on the line every single day. Or does sorry, not the same thing every day. They were doing everything. They had to be super like generalists. Like if you're building a vehicle, your job wasn't screw in the tires, and connect them. It was, whatever was happening were involved. And that's not as efficient as learning a specialty and getting something specific done. And then with the age of robotics, that shifted again, where it's like, well, maybe you don't need to be the person who pushes this button, pulls this lever, screws this in, and then that's your 9 to 5. And people, at every turn in advancement in technology, we're like, this is terrible. This is going to kill all these jobs. This is going to, ruin this whole, like, factory workers set of lives. And the trend, that was what the perception was from some people, the pessimists, I would say. The optimists were like, great, wow, I don't have to do this. I'm not going to have arthritis in my elbow on the right hand side because I use that same motion every day. That's amazing. What a blessing. The person in that job is thinking. The person on the outside is like, oh, but what if their, job change? And then that person became the technician that then fixes the robot that does the thing. Right. Like, so the labor market always has shifted with AI. There's more and more, I think, room for new roles that never existed before, new tasks that we haven't had the luxury to even address in business. That's already happening. Instead of, say, customers only being able to reach your organization when your operating hours are happening. Now someone can be there to answer the phone and help address questions, concerns, bookings, sales while you're closed. If you're 9 to 5, right, and you're done, if you get 10 calls a day after hours, the best chance you get at calling those people back is tomorrow morning first thing. On a practical level, there's never been a job in your business for someone to answer their phone and call leads right away. There's never been the luxury for that. But with
Right.
AI tooling, that definitely is an opportunity now. So if you think about that, it's like, okay, well, are you going to staff a person to do that? No, you're going to put an AI agent who picks up the phone, is polite and on brand and helpful. And you might have that same AI tool replace your answering machine. Instead of
Yeah.
someone going to answering machine, they're talking to the AI agent, and so they're never having to like wait to get their question answered. And then you start to think about, well, so what about the person who's our concierge sitting at the desk helping those people? What is their job? Well, maybe they've had to be glued to that desk and so that they could pick up the phone and they couldn't go greet guests in the lobby or help them carry their bags in like that, or help someone who's looking for information at the kiosk like on their own, like in self-service. Like, you start to, if your focus is, our goal is to understand our customers better than anybody else and find unique and interesting ways to serve and engage them, then your creativity will lead you to what's the thing we can do now that we have more time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No,
If the
I agree.
administrative job isn't like filling in the form to book them on the link because that was already handled automatically when they called in and the agent took care of it. And so then when they walk in, you could do a second mile service that you weren't able to do before. And that's, I think, the posture we try to teach when we are working with folks when they're starting to shift. Like, the reality is we've already seen in the work that we do, like certain positions and roles shift entirely. If you were a copywriter working on SEO blogging before, you may have just been focused on that. You may not have been focused on optimizing keywords and like CRO, like the conversion rate stuff, and looking at like front end and doing that. Your focus would have been like just one thing because that was going to take the most amount of time and it needed your focus. But when your time and focus and energy is not just on putting the words on the paper and turning the ideas that you have into something that's a written deliverable, your role can expand. And it's not a bad shift to go from I do one little thing to I'm able to handle a lot more things, and my unique perspective applied to those things that were maybe more technical or a little I just didn't have time to get to before is way better use of time than just this one piece. So there's a lot of like those are just some examples to talk through. The job market's changing. Like what we do in making files as knowledge workers, like ultimately that's what our job boils down to is like taking care of our customers and understanding them, building relationships,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
making files. And like if you pair those two things, like what's more important, making files or like knowing and understanding and building trust with our customers?
Or wowing your customers, or going above and beyond, or doing those amazing experiences, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think in tourism, honestly, this is probably the most exciting opportunity I think ever for the tourism industry. I'm like not even exaggerating, because to your point, it's like everybody in tourism's overworked. There's not enough labor in tourism. There's not enough people to do the work. And quite frankly, to your point, it's like people are glued to their desks and they're glued to here, and they're spending their time data entry and doing all these things. Whereas, to your point, it's like the agents can do a lot of that. This tool that I'm envisioning for DMOs, I really envision it as kind of a DMO operator to some extent, where it's essentially operating many of the back end functions of a DMO, reporting, you know what I mean, value of tourism work, destination, some of the analysis of data for destination development work, maybe all of that kind of stuff. And that really allows then the humans at the destination to go and be community advocates for the projects that they're trying to advocate for, or right, or go to municipal council meetings to present on X, Y, and Z, right? And feel more confident because their data is really good, and it's sort of all humming together, and it's actually telling a compelling story, right? So there's just so much value, I think, for these agentic capabilities and sort of the interim steps to get to full on agents. And for tourism, it's actually, honestly, I think it's just such an exciting opportunity. And I think the opportunity for tourism is the ability to grow, because to your point, it's like if I don't have the capacity or staff to necessarily man the phone for 24 hours a day, but I have an agent that can book things for me and get people into, my sales funnel and actually like fill up my spaces, that's pretty amazing, right? And that in alone is like, I think, worth it for almost every single tourism business, just to have that ability to, fill up bookings, and not, get the speed to lead, all of those types of things, right? So yeah, it's an exciting time. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in tourism, in every industry, but I think tourism's very ripe for a lot of very fun and exciting innovation. And I think the tourism experience in general is going to become more enhanced and better. The other thing we didn't even talk about from an agent perspective, although this is agentic and possibly not, is personalization, which is a really big opportunity, right? So personalization on the marketing side, personalization on the customer service side, right? Again, some of that's automation, but I think over time become more and more agentic, right? Where it's, the agent will be able to go and see your Google profile and see your history and see, you know what I mean? What keywords do you use to search, to get in here, and curate customized experiences for you, and curate customized communications, right? I think that's for me as a marketing communications agency, that's kind of where I'm focusing my attention a little bit, because that's like, that's been the promise of AI for a while, I would just say, but I feel like it's there now. The technology's there, the tools are there. And then, the better, I think, also companies need to really, tourism businesses and DMOs need to start thinking about themselves as data companies, right? Or as companies they need to think about their data differently, right? And think about the value of their data, right? And so again, the ability to segment and the ability to sort of get insights out of your customer data, right? All of the kind of stuff. And again, agentic capability can help us do that at scale in ways that just weren't possible before. One of the things in developing this tool and the research I've been doing in terms of some of the other tools that are out there. There's a lot of tools out there that do a lot of really cool, here's dashboards, here's whatever. But, the problem for a lot of small, medium-sized DMOs is they don't have data people, they don't have data analysts, they don't have data experts, right? So the agent or the tool can become your data analyst. Your data expert and can tell stories from your data and can pull out insights out of your data, right? That's really powerful for a small, medium-sized DMO that, has 3 people and are just trying to run the entire DMO front to end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Well, let's leave it there, Josh. I think we can talk about agents for quite a long time, and I'm sure we will be talking agents more together on a whole bunch of different fronts. But thanks for your time today. So I think if I could summarize, agents, whether they're actually here or not in full form, doesn't really matter, honestly. What matters is how your organization's preparing, how you're organizing your data, context, SOPs, playbooks, strategies, all those different things that we've been talking about for 2 years now, still relevant. So, so you can't skip over the work, but as I like to say, the juice is worth the squeeze. So get to work. Awesome. Thanks, Josh.